Hello, good day to one and all. This is Miss A. Krishna Sundar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KAHM Unity Women's College, Mancheri. Today, we are going to discuss the poem titled as These Were My Homes, written by the Indian writer Vijay Nambishan. So here is the writer Vijay Nambishan. And before we start with the poem, let's get into a brief discussion on the biography of the author. So Vijay Nambishan is a very famous poet, a critic and a journalist. He is a Malayali writer from Thalapalli Taluk, which is situated at the central part of Kerala. He was also a co-author with G. Thayil and Dom Moraes. I'm sure you might have studied a couple of poems written by Dom Moraes. And G. Thayil is a very popular name, and he is the author of the famous work Narcopolis. Now, Nambishan graduated from IIT Madras. He also won the All India Poetry Championship in the year 1988 for his work, his poem titled as Madras Central. He married Kaveri Nambishan, who is again another famous writer. He died in the year 2017 at the age of 54. With a number of articles which was based on Nambishan, and regarding a couple of comments given by the contemporary writers, we understand that he was someone like a recluse. He always wanted to remain alone. He was melancholic in his tone when he wrote poems, and most of his poems were open-ended kind of poems. So here comes the poem, These Were My Homes. So as you can see, there are 4 different stanzas for the poem, and you can see the picture on the right hand side, which is actually the collection of poetry, which is again titled as These Were My Homes. So I request all of you to pause the video and go through the entire poem once or twice. Now, one best part in studying poetry is that one poem cannot actually settle down with one single interpretation. So, considering one single poem, there are multiple interpretations, possible interpretations, which can come in different directions. So, what I would like to tell you now is that you should not confine this particular poem to my interpretations. So, that is why I tell you to read, to go through this poem once or twice, so that certain ideas get formed in your own mind without listening to the totality of my interpretations. So here we start with the poem, the very first stanza. These were my homes then, though I did not know the swell of the womb and a mother's long breast, and the small peace of a children's house, the blankets of my bed, and the night's rest beneath, and then the walking to sweet air. So as you go through these initial lines, we understand that he is talking about a home. Now this home can be a real home, or it can be a metaphorical substitute for his past or for his past memories. Now he begins the poem like this: These were my homes then. So we understand that he is talking about a past incident or maybe past instances. These were my homes then. So this is not his home now. These were my homes then. So this could be a memory. It can be a past situation. Though I did not know. So he was not able to recognize that he had a home once. So there is a kind of lack of self-realization which is coming here. Now sometimes it happens. You understand the value or you understand the importance of something only when you lose it. Till then, it is something like taken for granted. You never realize the value or importance of those things. So, this could be something like that, where there is a lack of self realization that when he was really within that home, he never recognized the importance or the value of this home. And that is why he says, I did not know. So, he never had enough time to know more about this particular home or this particular memory. And now he starts, the swell of the womb and a mother's long breast. So, this line indicates how life begins. It showcases how the baby develops in the womb of its mother. So, the swell of the womb and then the remaining years as a toddler or as a young infant, clutching on to the mother, which is actually the initial phase of an adult's life. So, the swell of the womb and a mother's long breast. So, this can actually indicate how life begins. And sometimes the point where life begins, this could be a very faint memory for many of us, because others will remember this, but we will not be able to relate to these events or incidents because we would be very small to understand these things, because it never remains in your memory when you were born, when you were at a very small age. So, the swell of the womb and a mother's long breast, so these are considered as his past memories, where he has no idea what really happened. And the small piece of a children's house. So maybe he's talking about his ancestral home, he's talking about the atmosphere there. But one thing that we can understand here is that there was some kind of a peace given for this child, a very good positive kind of ambience or atmosphere. The blankets of my bed and the night's rest beneath, and then the walking to sweet air. So, if you look at these last two lines, it's a very cozy atmosphere. The blankets of my bed and the night's rest beneath. So, as a child, you don't have much to think about. There is no responsibility given to you, and as you can say, you lead a carefree, tension-free kind of life. Now, if you look at the picture here, you can see how the baby sleeps. It's a very relaxed kind of sleep under the blanket. There is no responsibility, and you don't have to set a time schedule for your daily routine. So everything around you works on your schedule. So, in a way, you are the king or the queen of the house. So, the blankets of my bed and the night's rest beneath, and then the walking to sweet air. So, maybe he's talking about an ancestral home with a lot of land around. So maybe the walking that happens towards the sweet air. So here we can see it is all about the cozy, peaceful life a child experiences. Now moving on to the second stanza. These were the homes, though they did not know me. So here comes some kind of a lack of tie or a lack of bond, because he admits that these were the homes though they did not know me. In the initial stanza, he states that he never knew this home. So he calls it as his fault. Now in the second stanza, he states that these homes never understood him. So there is a kind of a tug of war which is happening within his mind. So in a way you can call it as a conflict. That could be an individual versus an ancestral home, or it could be individual versus society. So that kind of a conflict happens here in the mind of the author. So they did not know me. The worn cool green of my father's land. So he's talking about the ancestral property. So maybe tradition comes here, heritage comes here. So maybe he is talking about his ancestral home, which is situated at the central part of Kerala. Of my father's lands, older than battle, the wars that won them. So maybe he's talking about the struggles and hardship that the ancestors had gone through in claiming this property. So we understand that it's a conventional setup, a traditional kind of setup, but on the other hand, we have to realize that life moves on. The moments lingering for each was planned, and only I had to reach out to sweet air. So, see, in the second stanza, I had to reach out to sweet air, which means some kind of a planning should come from the individual. So maybe he would be talking about an adult stage here. So in the previous stanza, you can see that it was more a kind of an easier kind of life. But in this stanza, we realize that it is becoming more and more tough. The struggles and hardship or the trials and tribulations for an individual would be actually getting higher when they are in the adult stage. And as we all know, I'm sure that at one stage as children, all of us have dreamt of becoming adults. We wanted to become grown up people, right? But by the time we really grew up, we really love to go back to our childhood. So, this is a kind of conflict which can happen in every individual. Now, if you look at these lines, there are certain other works which can be easily connected. I'm sure you would have heard about Charles Lamb's Dream Children, the essay Dream Children, a Reverie, where Charles Lamb is talking about his grandmother field and the home where she lived. Again, there is another poem which you might have studied, Dilip Chitre's poem, The House of My Childhood. This is again a memory in connection with his ancestral home. Then comes Kamala Das's poem, which is titled as My Grandmother's House, where she speaks about her strong longing to go back to that ancestral home. So if you're getting a paragraph question or an essay question, definitely you can connect all these works when you are writing your answers. So moving on to the third stanza, then these are the homes that I will know yet. So this is something which can be related to the present or something which can be stretched towards the future as well, because you can see I will know yet, which means I will. So there is a future tense. I might know about this or something which I haven't known till date, but I might know more of it in the coming days. And now in this stanza, though he is talking about the present, which is connected with the future, we can realize that there is a kind of regret which is coming in, because he feels that he should have done something, he should have known some people, or he should have known these homes. So there is a tinge of regret which is coming here. So maybe he is trying to tell that he never got a chance for this. And now he says, one book to live in, one honest page, one face to meet at dawn and noon and night. So maybe he is longing for something which he has lost. So this can be something like a nostalgic feeling. It can be his relationship with his past home. Need not be home. It can be a metaphorical kind of thing where his relationship got completely cut down when he moved into the cities. So it can be something like city versus village. So all these interpretations and possibilities can be here. So one face to meet at dawn and noon and night. So at least one relationship which he can hold on to. So we understand that there is some kind of a pain or a disappointment which is coming in the mind of the poet. One storm to soothe. Now, storm actually is a negative word. It is a negative term, but here even a storm can soothe. And this is the beauty of this writer's poetry. One oblivion. Now, oblivion is actually forgetfulness. Now, one funny part here is that even if you want to forget something, in the first part, you should have the memory of that thing. Only when you have a memory, you can forget it later. So here the sad part is that he is not even retaining a strong memory of his past. So one oblivion, one stage, one bed in which to breathe my last air. Now when he comes to the very last line, one bed in which to breathe my last air, a fear of death is something which we can see. And when you go through these lines, you can actually connect it with Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard. I'm sure you might have heard about this writer, the pre-romantic poet Thomas Gray, and his very famous elegy written in a country churchyard. If you have gone through Gray's poem, you can see that he writes an epitaph for himself at the last part of the poem, like what will happen when he is dying or when he dies. His friends might say these comments, the villagers would give these comments. So he's actually imagining something in the future. So, similar to that, here the poet is in fact thinking about his death. So you can see a slow transition, because in the very first stanza it was about how life begins in a mother's womb, and slowly now in the third stanza we have reached the point of the fear of death. So this death can be a metaphorical kind of a persona that you can see here. Now comes the very last line. At last, the homes made on other roads. So, see, from the explanation given with the initial stanza, now he is talking about a totally different home. Not the homes that he had thought about, but homes made on the other roads. But were these mine to know, mine to be told? I should not tell, lest they should become mine. So now he has a conflict in his mind, because he's talking about a different home. So probably this is a home which is more closer to death. So maybe he's talking about death itself in this stanza. So there is a metaphorical configuration of death, and he says, but were these mine to know? Can I explain these homes? Were these homes mine, mine to be told? I should not tell, lest they should become mine. Now he says, how can I talk about something? I can talk about something only if those things are mine. So maybe he is talking about a past memory, or maybe it could be a fear of death, because only when you embrace death, you can really speak about death. So we finally reach some unknown places. So that is a theory of life, right? Because we begin from one point, at one point of this earth, and we end up somewhere else. So our roots are completely shaken off. So we belong to a place where we do not actually belong. And this conflict in identity, or this kind of a conflict in relation to belongingness, is something which is reflected throughout the poem. So if you look at some of the major themes here, you can see in totality this is about how life goes. It begins as a baby and it moves on. It goes through the difficulties of life, the trials and tribulations, and finally it touches the last point, which is death. So this is a poem which is actually going through a juxtaposition of past and present. So juxtaposition is actually placing them simultaneously or together. So juxtaposition of past and present. Now again, there is life versus death, childhood versus adulthood. Then there is a problem of belongingness which is coming. So definitely in connection with that, there is identity crisis. And the final question that comes, who am I? Or where do I belong to? So this is the answer that the poet is trying to find. But throughout the poem, we do not get any definite kind of answers, and that is why we have already suggested that most of the poems written by this author ends as open-ended kind of poems where the interpretation is totally left to the imagination of the readers. So this is in fact a poem of introspection, or in other words, a kind of self-realization. So with this, we come to the end of this poem. So thank you very much for your patient listening. If you have any more queries, if you want any more assistance, please feel free to get connected with me through my email ID. So thank you very much. Thank you.